Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. I am Carolyn Byers. I'm the Director of Education at Madison Audubon. And usually I'm out in the community teaching in public, both kids and adults. And right now that's not an option for us, so we're putting all of the content that we can online for you so that you can enjoy nature and relax and just have some fun while you're safe at home. So you can find all of our safer and funner at home activities on our website. That's madisonaudubon.org. And there's a drop down menu in the education section called Safer and Funner. And we've got all kinds of games and activities and video lessons like this one for adults, for kids, for everyone. So go check that out. We'll drop a link in the comments so that you can find it easily. And today I'm going to be showing you how to paint a meadowlark. So I am the education director at Madison Audubon, but I am also the artist behind Green Sparrow Arts. And so I have spent several months creating this project to share with all of you. It is a free download available at my website. So that's greensparrowarts, plural, arts.com. And I think we'll drop a link for that too in the comments. And today's lesson it's going to be me painting at my own pace. So it's not going to be a slow one that maybe a beginner could keep up with, but it will show you the techniques that I'm using. And this is going to be available after this live video so that you can watch it and pause it and just go at your own pace. So watch it for a while. Maybe you'll get excited about the project. You can go download it for free and we can all paint together. And if you do have it ready to paint right now, you can definitely paint along with me and ask questions along the way and I'll answer them for you. So this is the project. It is, gosh, how many pages is it? It is a 20-page document that walks you through how to paint an eastern or a western meadowlark. And the thing that I really, really love about this is that the image is all ready for you. So in the document, there is a page that looks like this for the eastern meadowlark and another one for the western meadowlark. And what that means is that you don't have to spend all that time getting the drawing perfect before you paint. And I mean, there are days when I love to draw and I love to get every line just perfect and really spend time digging into learning about the subject that I'm drawing. Those are fun days. There are also days when my brain cannot handle that and I just want the relaxation of painting without fussing with all of that detail. So this project allows you to skip all the drawing and just get right to the painting. And I'm actually going to be working off a printed image today too. So I stuck a piece of 90-pound watercolor paper into my printer and I just printed out that one page of the document and I'm ready to start painting. And so 90-pound watercolor paper, we can talk more about supplies and stuff as we go too, but the poundage is how thick the paper is. So you want to use watercolor paper because if you use regular computer paper or even a few different kinds of paper, it will not absorb water as well. So when it dries, it'll get kind of buckly and crinkly. So watercolor paper should help with that. But if you use very thick paper, printers that you find at home will likely jam. So tread cautiously if you're going to use thick paper. You could also try printing it at a FedEx or a store like that if you feel safe going out to a business like that. Okay, so I have my image all printed out on the paper. It took about 30 seconds, which was amazing. I've spent a lot of time drawing this meadowlark in the past few months. And let me show you the final image again. So this is the meadowlark. This is the eastern meadowlark. And when you're looking at these birds in the field, they are nearly indistinguishable by their plumage. So easterns and westerns look very, very similar. Some people say they can tell them apart. Maybe if you get a really good look, you can lean one way or the other. It's usually their song that lets you tell them apart. But meadowlarks are eastern meadowlarks are typically a bit brighter on the breast. They have a white stripe, a malar stripe, in between their yellow throat and their gray cheek. And they have thicker barring along their sides. And I've got at least an image of the cheek and the stripe of the western here. I did not continue it down into here because, well, there's not much painting down there. So here you can see the western, the yellow line goes right up to the cheek. And there are instructions for how to paint either an eastern or a western in this document. So you can choose your favorite. All right, so that is the document, the image that I'm working from today. I'm going to be using paints made by Greenleaf and Blueberry today. She's just a artist out west who takes rocks and turns them into paint. It's awesome. So this is the paint set I'm working with. You can use any paints you want to do this project. You could even do it using a Crayola watercolor set. It would be really fun, actually. I might try it. But I will help you in the beginning of this document, or this project. I give a list of colors that I use, and I also show a color swatch for each of the colors I use. So you can take any set you have and try to mix those colors, match them. And I also give some suggestions for more widespread brands, so Winsor Newton and Daniel Smith. So there's lots of options for choosing your paint. What I really recommend, though, is making a mixing chart like this. And if anyone has questions about how to make a mixing chart, I can answer those. But basically, you have all of your colors in your palette here and right here. And then each one of these cells is, say this cell here, it's this color mixed with this color. So when you draw a line down to them, you can find the color that it looks like. And this is really useful because if I, for example, I know that I'm going to be using a lot of Mayan yellow in this project. I have a mixing chart for my other paint set here, and I know that Winsor Lemon is the closest match to the Mayan yellow. So by really experimenting with your watercolors and getting to know them a little bit, it makes mixing a lot easier. So I recommend it if you want to take the time to do it. It's worth it. And then the brush that I'm using today is a Pentel water brush. These are really fun to use in the field. They're super cheap. It's like $7 for 3 of them or something. It's just a lot of plastic, which I don't love, but I've had this one for years. And the things that I love about it are that when you're in the field, you can fill this up with water. And so you don't have to take a cup of water out with you. The other thing I love is that these are synthetic bristles, but they hold up really well. So a lot of more serious painters like to use sable brushes, and there's pros and cons with that, but you have to be very careful with them. This brush, I can be pretty rough with it, and it still holds a really nice point. So these are a fun brush to try out if you have not yet. So I said I was not filling this with water today. I do have a little water cup with me. So that's what I'm going to be using to wash out my brush with. Okay, I think we're ready to start painting. I've showed you everything. So bear with me as I change my camera setup, and I'll be ready to paint in just a minute, okay? And you guys would love to see my setup here. I have the window mount for my spotting scope. So it's a car window mount. And I have attached that to a cast iron pan and balanced that on another cast iron pan. It's very high tech, but it does seem to be working. Okay, so I've got my Meadowlark there. And I'm going to be checking the comments periodically. So if you have any questions, send them my way. But I'm also going to be painting this sideways. So if I don't see them right away, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to be following the instructions for this project just so that you guys can see how it works. So right now we have our image on the paper. We've got all of our supplies ready. My paints are here, my water's up there, got my brush. Oh, I have a paper towel too for dabbing off some water. And step one, and here's the image that I'm looking at. It's having trouble focusing. There we go. So this project has step-by-step images to show you how the painting will progress. And step one is going to be to add a light yellow breast to our Meadowlark. And I'm going to take some Mayan yellow and yellow ochre, and I want this to be fairly watery. So I'm going to show you my mixing, because otherwise that would be a little boring for you. Another good reason why you should make a color chart is because a lot of watercolor paints look very similar and also don't look like what they end up being. So this color here is our Mayan yellow. It turns into this. So I often forget where they are in the palette. So having this chart here really helps me to know which color I want to grab. So the instructions say to mix 2 parts Mayan yellow to 1 part yellow ochre. So this is our Mayan yellow, and I'm just going to add a little bit of water in it to activate it. These are watercolor pans. I'm going to add a little bit to our yellow ochre too, so it's ready when we need it. Watercolor pans are just liquid watercolors that are added to a small tray, usually plastic, sometimes metal. And the paint dries so that when you add water to it, it reactivates it and makes it liquidy again. So this is my preferred way to use watercolors. It's really easy to use both in the field and at home. I think tubes are a little cumbersome in the field. Okay, so I have some Mayan yellow here, and I'm starting with the Mayan yellow because it is the lighter color, the less powerful color. And I'm going to add just a little bit of the yellow ochre to it. I'm going to go slowly because with watercolor, it's really easy to go darker, but it's very hard to go lighter. And I want this to be somewhere in between a buttery yellow and a lemon yellow. And so this is a color I think is going to be close. So I am going to bring my painting back here, and I'm actually going to find some scrap paper down here and test it out, see what it looks like. And I think that looks pretty good. The lighting is a little different on the camera, but that's a good color. I'm happy to work with that. So I want it to be a little bit watery so it's not a bold color. So I'm going to wet my brush a little bit more. And I'm going to paint, let's see, I'm going to paint it with clean water first. So I'm cleaning my brush off entirely so there's no more paint on it. And it's a little hard because that Mayan yellow is a strong color. And now I'm just going to paint the areas that I want to be yellow with that clean water. And this is going to be using a wet on wet technique. So the watercolor paper is going to be wet, and I'm going to drop the wet paint into it. And that's going to really help the watercolor paints just sort of flow through the space in a really lovely organic way. And I'm going to start by just kind of dropping it in up here where I want the color to be the brightest. And I'm going to gently pull it down and away from that edge so that it kind of fades. And I can clean my brush off and maybe smooth that edge a little so it's not too drastic. And I want it to be just a little brighter. I'm going to be painting, this is the Eastern Meadowlark, by the way. So I'm going to make the belly more intense. Again, though, it's good to start slowly and build up to intensity because it's hard to remove watercolor paint once it's down. So I'm going to leave the belly like that for now. I may go back in and add some more paint, but first I want to do the throat. And I'm just going to paint this again with water first, and now with paint. And since this is the Eastern, I am leaving this spot bare. We want it to be yellow. if it were the western, we would bring that yellow right up to the gray cheek. All right, and next I need some yellow in front of the eye. And this one, I'm not going to use water first. I'm just going to paint it right in. Right here. There's a cardinal singing outside right now, and that reminded me that today I saw an indigo bunting at my bird feeder. And we've been keeping a COVID yard list just because, you know, it's making things exciting. And so I'm really excited to add that to my yard list. That was a good bird this morning. Okay, so I've got that color there. The next step is to brighten up these yellow accents. So I'm going to take a tiny, tiny bit of Mayan red and add it to the paint that we already mixed. But I'm out of paint, so I need to remix that first. So I'm going to snag that Mayan yellow again. I only need a little bit this time, so I'm not going to make as much. I need a little yellow ochre. And then a tiny, tiny bit of Mayan red. And Mayan red is this color. It's extremely bold. So I am going to take a very tiny amount and add it in to begin with. So we're just making this slightly more orange. If any of you have been seeing any cool birds lately, I would be excited to hear about it in the comments. Drop me a message about all your grosbeaks and orioles. Neither of which I have seen in my yard yet. I do hear an angry squirrel though. All right, so I've got that color mixed up. And let's see. I'm going to just drop it in up here where we want a little darker, a little bolder color. And the light on my screen makes this look very pale. So I'm trying to decide if I should paint it darker and crazy so that it looks right for you all, or if I should paint it the way I see it. I'm going to go paint it the way I see it, because otherwise it's going to screw me up. Okay, so we've completed steps 1 and 2 already. And here, I just want to show you this, because I really like this. It's the difference between the eastern and western meadowlarks with the yellow throat there. Ooh, and Cassie just wrote and she saw our first rose-breasted grosbeak ever. Awesome. Also orioles and hummingbirds. Abby's got her first oven bird. I looked at him like an alien. Awesome. I'm glad. I bet that bird felt like a star. Only female rose-breasted grosbeaks in my yard for some reason. Maybe I just missed the males. Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe the males are up higher in the trees singing or in a different yard singing. I've only seen a female grosbeak in my yard too. Okay, so now we're going to do step 3, which is the gray beak and the cheek. Beak and cheek, I like it. All right, so we're going to get a gray ready. And this color set does have a gray. And I could use that if I wanted to, but I'm going to follow the instructions just because, well, because rules are good, I suppose. So I'm going to take this black here, and I'm going to add it to my palette. And to make a gray with this black, all I need to do really is water it down a bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more water so it becomes more translucent and a less bold color. And it's looking pretty good. So let's test it down here. A nice light gray. If I want to, it's really easy to go darker, but especially with black, I'm going to start light. So I am going to first make sure that this white or this yellow up here is dry, because if I go in here and add a gray to the cheek, if this is wet, there's a good chance that the colors could mix. And that's a fun thing about watercolor if you're prepared for it, but if you're not, it can be stressful. Ooh, red-headed woodpecker. That's an awesome bird to see. I like that. So I'm going to go and add this gray in on the cheek. Okay. So it says to wet the area of the beak and paint the beak with one layer of that watery gray color. So there's some water. Here's some gray. And this beak is not, all the details are not fully drawn on this beak, which I kind of like. Sometimes it's nice to suggest the details. So there's no upper limit here. So you can sort of decide where your beak ends. It also does not show all the details in the mouth here. But I think that's okay. Well, of course I think it's okay. I created it, right? All right, so now I want to make just a slightly stronger black. So I'm going to add a little bit more black to the gray that I mixed up before. And I'm going to start at the base of the bill here and work out and just sort of draw a little line of paint, making it darker at the top. Okay. And I'm going to fade to that lighter gray color as I get closer to the tip. Maybe go a little bit darker. You can always go darker later. And we're going to darken the inside of the mouth and the lower part of the beak too. So I'm just going to go right in there with paint. Darken that, and we want just a little bit of shadow down here. And I think inside the mouth needs to be darker already. So I'm just going to go grab some more black paint, mix it into my gray, toss it on in there. So another thing about this paint along project that I love is that the pressure for painting well is really low, because if I screw it up, I can just print out another image and get ready to go. I don't have to spend all of that time redrawing another image, which I like. All right, so I think step 3 is done. We got the beak and the cheek. And now we're gonna paint the light brown back. So this is step 4 here. And we're gonna paint this whole area a light brown color. And then step 5, I'm gonna show it to you while this is here, is gonna be these darker feather accents along the back. And all of these pink highlights here are the places that you add the accents. And really, it's very close to just tracing all these lines in here, which can be tricky with a paintbrush for sure, but it's a pretty easy step. It looks intimidating, but it's pretty easy. All right, so first we're going to get our paint ready, and we're going to do a little bit of brown ochre and some water for that watery mix again. And brown ochre is a nice rich brown color. And it's this paint right here. Nope, that's Castle Earth. That's why I have my my cheat sheet. Here's the brown ochre. I'm going to toss this up here. Oops, you can't see that though. Okay. Brown ochre. It says to add a little bit of water, but since I'm going to be wetting the paper, I'm not going to add that because there is a such thing as too much water, at least for this type of painting. Other types you can use lots and lots of water, which is a good point. You should make this your own. It doesn't have to look exactly like the image that I'm suggesting. All right, so add the watery brown ochre to the wet areas. I'm skipping ahead. I didn't wet some areas yet. So I do want to leave some white in this area here. It's just white and the black striping. But that should be a good placing for all of my brown. So now that I've got that wet, I'm going to start brushing this brown ochre in. There's a yellow warbler singing outside. Sweet, 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 I'm so sweet. Does anyone have a favorite bird mnemonic? I really like the common yellowthroat. It says witchity, 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 witch. Mostly because they look like a Halloween bird because they're wearing that black mask. So Sue says she's having trouble getting the download. I sent a request with my email but did not receive a reply. It should be an automatic email reply that sends a link to you that you can click to go and get the download. So if that's not working right now, send me an email, and we can toss my email address in the bottom. It's carolyn.byers@madisonAudubon.org, and I'll send it to you. Thanks for letting me know. Last I checked, it was working though, so I do apologize if it's not now. Okay, so now we need the darker brown accents on the back, and you could wait to do these. And you know what? I might wait because I like how it looks when it's all dry and it's not blurry. So I'm gonna wait for this area to dry before I move on to the darker brown accents. And I'm gonna skip right ahead to the black part because that's exciting. So this is the next step, step 6. We'll go back to step 5 later. So this is where we add the black necklace, the black eye stripe, and the crown stripe, and we darken these black accents here. Okay, so this is a bold step. Oh, you saw a ruby-throated hummingbird. That's awesome. I have not seen one. Oh, that's not true. I think I saw one, but it was really quick and not a good look. But I haven't seen many this year. So I'm going to start by painting the necklace in with water because I want this black paint to sort of move and swirl in here a little bit. And I'm just going to dip directly from my palette here. I'm going to be bold. But if you want to, you could mix up a more watery, less intense black, and that would maybe reduce risk and stress for you. So I left this spot patch in here a little bit lighter because I want it to look like sunlight is hitting that and maybe the feathers are shining a little bit. And I might go in and darken it up later. We'll see how it dries, but that's where I'm going to leave it right now. And, ooh, come on camera. There we go. And I'm just going to paint the eye stripe right in. And same with the crown stripe. But I definitely don't want it just to be straight black. So I am going to leave a lighter spot right in the middle. I'm going to darken the edge here and up here. And smooth that edge just a little bit so it's not quite so abrupt. Let's check our time. It's 1 o'clock. It's only been a half an hour. We're cruising. Okay. This paper is a little different than I'm used to. It can't hold as much water as I generally like. It's cool to try new supplies and see what kind of differences there are. So now I'm going to paint in the black spots along the barring along the sides. And I'm going to keep in mind that this brown paint still might be a little bit wet. I bet it's mostly dry by now, but the black and the brown might interact a little here. There. Looks like they're all painted in now. And I think I'm going to remove just a little bit of paint. I'm going to clean brush, have it be a little bit on the drier side, and just brush away some of the paint because I do want to, again, make it not just jet black. And this needs a little bit more up here now. Okay, now I think we're ready to go back to step 5 and get those darker colors in on the back. So for this one, we're just going to use Castle Earth, this one here, the darker, richer brown, directly from the paint set. And I'll show you, that's what the Castle Earth looks like. Although with this lighting on the camera, it's looking pretty black there. So I have some black on my paint, or some of this Castle Earth on my paintbrush, and I'm just gonna start painting in those feathers there. And again, remember there's some good diagrams about where this paint goes, so you don't have to stress about that. I do like to be a little careful as I paint. There becomes obviously less paint on my brush, so my lines get less bold as I go. And when I reach back into my palette, like I just did, the paint all of a sudden got much bolder as I'm laying it down because there's just so much more on there. So be aware of how much paint is on your brush so that you don't accidentally drop down a whole lot, or maybe you have to go in and add some more paint to areas where there's not enough. Okay, and for these lines down here, I'm just going to paint little, the details are going to end up looking like shadows dividing the feathers up. So you'll get all those individual flight feathers. And if you wanted to, you could also just give a more general brush to that area. You don't have to add all this detail if you don't want. That's the cool thing about these projects. You can just make them your own. So I hope everyone will be submitting their impressionistic and pointillism Eastern Meadowlark projects in the comments soon. My dog's asleep in the corner of the room and he just started growling. He's dreaming. All right, and here I'm just gonna lay in some splotchy suggestions really quickly. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on them. Same along the back. And that was another case where my paint started out so dark and it shouldn't have been that dark. So I'm just gonna grab right from that and move it around a little. Excellent. Does anybody have any birds that they're excited to see this year? Maybe haven't yet? I want to get up north and see some warblers. Hi, Sally. It's good to see you. I'm going to add a little bit right here. Great. Okay, I think we're about done with the back there. Okay, let's see what the next step is. So we already did the black streaking. That was step 6. Let's see, there's a whole lot of Eastern versus Western Meadowlark details here because these stripes are a little less bold for this barring on the Western. Let's go over to step 7. So we've got some shadows. We're going to add some shadows in under the wing and under the tail, and the lower belly right here. So we're going to mix up a nice light gray color again, and that's just a watery black. Oops. Let's snag some black, toss it here. It's already pretty watered down because I had a lot of water on my brush. And let's see. gonna toss that. Well, first I'm gonna test it. Whenever you mix up a new color, you should test it. And I'm glad I did, because I think I want it just a little lighter. Okay. So I'm gonna start by doing this little shadow in here under the wing and under the tail, right there. And I'm gonna make this a little darker here. And I want to drop a little shadow in under here. Maybe soften this line a bit. Cool. So we have some shadows there. Let's see. We are very nearly done with the bird itself. I think I want a little bit darker in the mouth. Maybe a little bit darker up here and right there. So it's a good idea as you move through your painting to keep checking back in on the areas that you've already done, so that you can make sure they all work together. Because if we just work on this and then move over here and work on this, once we add this in, we may decide that this needs to be a whole lot brighter. So it's a good idea to keep looking at your whole piece as you move through it. Okay, so I will be honest, when I created this packet, I totally forgot to do the feet until the very, very end. So let's paint the feet next, just so that we can check off all the birds. So we're going to use a little bit. We have to mix the color for the feet now. And here's the instructions for the legs and the feet. And you can see there's a zoomed in image of just the feet. And you can also see where the shadows on the legs are going to go. Okay. So we're going to mix this color, and to do that, I'm going to do some white. Oops, you can't see that, sorry. Okay, we got some white. We need a little Castle Earth and a little Mayan red. So our Castle Earth was that dark brown color. That might be too much. We'll see. Let's add a little Mayan red. We'll see what it looks like. That's pretty close. Looks very white on camera, doesn't it? Maybe if I tilt it? No. It's a light brownish peachy color. Okay, so I'm going to paint the feet in carefully, and this is where this brush is pretty nice because it does hold a really nice tip for getting these fine lines in. Okay, and now I'm going to add, let's see, we need to add the shadow. So we're going to use the same paint we mixed earlier, but a more intense color for it. So I could dip or grab some of this paint and then dab my paint brush on a paper towel. I don't think I have a ton of paint here, so I'm going to mix just a little bit more, and I'm going to make it a little darker in the process. Okay, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to test that color again down here. And I'm also going to spin my brush a little to make the point very, very pointy. I'm going to pick up some more paint. I'm going to toss some shadows in. And it's also a reasonable idea to wait until the first layer of paint on the feet dried, because then you know that the paint is not going to move around after you lay it down. Okay, So we got our shadows on the feet there. Let's see, it is 1:10. Does anybody have any questions while we're moving along on this? I think I might be happy just painting the bird today, not continuing on to the stump and the flowers. Although maybe we could paint some flowers. I kind of like that. Okay, let's paint a flower. So these flowers are bergamot, and it's one of my favorite prairie flowers. So we're going to skip the fence post for now. We are going to paint a little flower though. Let's see. So that is step 9, the stems and the leaves. And before we really get into this, I want to show you at the end of this project, I have some reference photos that I included. So there's some Eastern and Western meadowlark reference photos just to help you match colors, especially if you've not spent a lot of time looking at these birds. There's another maybe better picture of the Western with their paler breast. But that's a bergamot flower. That's what we're trying to paint here. So let's get some stems and leaves in. And I usually like to mix my own greens. I find that a lot of greens that are in paint sets are really, they're kind of bright. And while greens often appear bright in nature, sometimes if you add a really bright, jarring green to it, it can start to look unnatural. So I'm going to mix my own green for this, and I'm going to use Mayan yellow and Mayan blue. And I'm going to clean my palette here. I love these travel sets because you can just take them anywhere. They're nice and small, but it also does not leave a ton of room for mixing. Okay, so we need Mayan yellow and Mayan blue number 2. So here's our Mayan yellow. Again, I'm going to start with this color because it is so light and it's very easily overpowered. And Mayan blue is a pretty strong color. All right, and now this is the Mayan blue. I started to go for this one. That's the Mayan purple. I don't want that. Not right now. So here's our Mayan blue, and I'm going to add this in and see how strong it gets. And bergamot leaves are they're a little bit on the blue side, at least as far as green leaves go. They're greenish blue. So I'm going to mix just a little bit more blue in until I get a greenish blue. And I'm going to test that on my paper to see if it's what I want. And it is. I like that. So I'm going to, I tested the color. Let's see. Now I'm going to paint the stems, leaves, and the base of the flower heads green. All right. So we've got green stem. Leaves. And the base of the flower head is actually up here. And all of these too. And there's tons of little tiny parts to these flowers, especially up in here. So it's not really necessary to totally stay within the lines while you're painting this. And I think it looks a lot more fun when you're out of the lines a little bit. So I'm going to add some paint to these two as well. I was thinking it would be fun to make 2 other projects that go along with this meadowlark, so that you could have maybe 3 next to each other. So what do you all think? Would you like a meadowlark nest with eggs, or a meadowlark adult feeding a fledgling, or different grassland birds all together? You know, we could do a bobolink and a Henslow sparrow and call them the grassland trio. What would be interesting for you? Grassland birds are my favorite. I think they're really neat because they're often overlooked. You know, they're not as flashy as some other birds, although this meadowlark is pretty fancy. But they're a little harder to see. You know, they hide down in the grass. They're not as bold as, say, the oriole that is always bopping around up in the trees. So I like that they're a little underappreciated. All right, and we're going to take that green that we mixed before, and we're going to add just a little bit of the black to it so that it becomes a darker shade of green. And that's going to be our shadow for these leaves. Ooh, Robin says, who is the artist? So I am Carolyn Byers. I'm the education director at Madison Audubon, and I am also the artist behind Green Sparrow Arts. And that's my business, my side business. So this is a free downloadable paint-along project that I created to share with you. And it is, let's see, here's the final piece. This is the Meadowlark, and you can do either an Eastern or a Western. And it's a 20-page document where you can just print out the image and start painting. So there's, you don't have to spend a lot of time drawing with it. And it's great. Okay, so we're going to add in shadows where these bright pink guides are. So let's bring this image back. We've got our darker green. And I'm going to toss a little bit of shadow here, a little bit up there, a little there. And this, I printed this image a little bit smaller than I normally would today, just because it would be quicker to get done in a short amount of time. But it is also making it a little hard to shade the stems on these leaves the way I would. Which really sounds like I'm making excuses here, so sorry for that. I should suck it up and paint. Okay, got some shadows there. Toss a little bit there and there. Has anyone out there been turning to art more now that, well, things are a little different than they usually are? I am finding art to be very relaxing. It's a little bit meditative. I don't have much room for other things in my brain when I'm focusing so closely on painting. And that's been a really nice haven for me when my thoughts are so good at running elsewhere lately. Okay, so we got those leaves in. Okay, I think we're ready for flowers next. So now we need to mix up a little bit of purple. And the bergamot purple is lighter in color. So I'm going to start with 3 parts white, 2 parts red, and 1 part violet. And you don't have to be so precise with the parts. I was just trying to give people a little guide. But honestly, I usually just throw paint together until it looks about where I want. So we have some white. We need a little Mayan red, which was this color here. And a little Mayan violet. And it's interesting how white that looks on camera. This is definitely a purple in real life. And I took it a little bit too red that time, so I'm going to add more of the Mayan violet and call that good. I am going to test it on the side of my paper first. And I have right now a pretty small image on a pretty large paper, which is why I have all this room on the side to test. But you could also line up your, come on, focus. Line up all these little test swatches along the edge so that they take up less space. Or you could have a scrap piece of paper, but you always want to test on the same kind of paper that you're painting on, because paint looks different on differently colored or different textures, different tints of paper. For example, this paper that I'm working on today has a very blue tint, which I don't love, but it was also the thinnest paper I had. And I wanted it to print out of my printer. Okay. So I am, again, not focusing too closely on painting within the lines here. And I'm just tossing a little bit of color up too on those dots for the very tips of the flowers. These are one of my favorite prairie flowers. I think they look like little crowns. And not that I'm really into crowns, but they're very fluffy. And I love the way they smell when I walk through the prairie and my legs brush them. And we have some in our front yard, and it's so good for pollinators. We see so many bees and butterflies on them. Bergamot's my favorite. Anyone else have a favorite prairie plant they want to give a shout out to? You can type it in the comments. Okay, now I'm gonna mix a little darker color to add some shadows or some detail to the plants. And I think I'm just gonna go with some more Mayan purple and a little bit of that black, just a little though. Let's darken it. Okay. And these also don't have to be too precise, because the lucky thing about this is that these flower petals are kind of just a crazy jumble. And while I did draw all of the parts for each of the flowers, your brain might not notice all of the parts. So you just have to sort of get enough of the shadows in to make it a little believable, because they're not going to be looking at it super closely. Ooh, Emily likes the compass plants. I like them too. I like all of the giant leaved plants, prairie dock and cup plant. I have a toddler, and last year we had a lot of fun finding cup plant that was holding water and pouring it on him. I promise he liked it. We weren't just being mean. But that was really nice. Okay, so we only have about 5 minutes left. I'm not going to paint the fence post right now. Maybe I'll come back and do another one for you on that. But we have the bird, we've got the feet, we've got the bergamot done. So we are, gosh, at only an hour, we've made some pretty great progress, and that's kind of cool. So I'm going to get this standing back up again so I can say a proper goodbye to everybody. Yeah, here we go. Ooh. All right, let's change this around. Beautiful. Hi, everyone. It was fun painting with you. Oh, yeah, definitely little critters hanging out in the cup plant. That's cool, too. We find a lot of bugs these days. I like it. All right, so I was painting, just to recap in case anyone missed it, I was painting the Meadowlark, paint along project that I created for everyone. It's a free download. You can, we're going to put a link in the comments, I think, and you can head over to my website, greensparrowarts.com, and download it for free and paint along. And this video will be available to anyone after the live event so that you can paint at your own pace and work along with me. So I think we're going to be doing some more drawing, like botanical illustration classes this later this spring and summer. So stay tuned for that. And as always, our Madison Audubon programming is free, at least most of it. There's a few classes you can pay for, but a lot of it is free. So if you have the means and you're excited about it, it'd be great if you can donate and support so we can keep bringing everybody free nature programming, because we all need a little bit more nature and a little bit more relaxing right now. So everybody stay safe, get outside, enjoy nature, and be well. I'll see you later. Bye.